was playing well into the outer reaches of Dodger Stadium. Against reliever Jay Howell, Carter hit a bloop single that sent a jolt through the Dodgers, bringing home 2 runs, including the game winner, courtesy of Kevin McReynolds, all the way from first base.
If you're down to your last strike or last pitch or whatever, you just try and do whatever you can to make something happen. And in this case, fortunately, it fell in our way.
And as the Dodgers finally fell to the Mets 3-2, New York took Game 1. A win made all the sweeter since it came against the Dodgers ace, Orel Hershiser.
Orel is one of the top pitchers in the National League, probably in baseball, obviously in baseball. And for us to beat them and score 3 in the 9th, you know, it's a very uplifting win for us, obviously.
The Dodgers may have been unable to rest comfortably after blowing a 9th-inning lead in Game 1, but Tim Belcher's performance against the Mets' 20-game winner David Cone was more than comforting. Cone was not up to his usual stuff. For openers, he gave up a run in the first inning, and then before the Mets could muster any offense, L.A. exploded in the 2nd inning. The big blow came from Mickey Hatcher, who was written into the Dodger lineup just in time. Hatcher keyed the rally with a 2-run double that put Los Angeles up 4-0 and no doubt gave the hitting-hungry Dodgers a huge lift. L.A. added one more for good measure, and by the time manager Davy Johnson removed Cone, the Dodgers led 5-0. That was more than enough for Belcher, who was right on the beam against the Mets, striking out a career-high 10. Belcher didn't entirely subdue the New Yorkers, however. In the 4th, Keith Hernandez struck a blow for the Mets, and it was good for 2 runs. But Hernandez wasn't through. In the 9th, his 3rd RBI of the game put the Mets within 3 runs and drove Belcher to the bench. Everyone at Dodger Stadium may have come down with a sudden case of deja vu when the Mets loaded the bases, and up stepped Gary Carter. But Carter came up empty, and the Dodgers won it 6-3 as they evened the series. It was no doubt a big victory for Los Angeles.
Yeah, it was. And it was also a total reversal from what's generally been going on this season as far as scoring 1, 2, 3 runs a game. And here we scored 4 in the 2nd inning off a top-notch pitcher like David Cone. So it was a big lift for us.
Meanwhile, in the cooler climes of Fenway Park, the Boston Red Sox met the heavily favored Oakland A's for Game 1 of the American League playoffs. As expected, the Athletics came with clout. This home run by Jose Canseco, the man with the most clout of all, put Oakland ahead 1-0. But Oakland's explosive lineup was otherwise subdued by Bruce Hurst, who continued to thrive at Fenway, this time getting a little help from Ellis Burks. Dave Stewart proved equally tough. He shut out the Red Sox for 6 innings before a sacrifice fly in the bottom of the 7th tied the score at 1. But not for long. In the 8th, Dave Henderson came up with a runner on 2nd and untied it, putting the A's ahead to stay. Oakland put its 1-run lead into the trusty hands of ace reliever Dennis Eckersley, who got out of the 9th-inning jam by striking out Wade Boggs, a rare feat for any pitcher, and a flourishing finish as Oakland won the opener 2-1.
You've got to win a game here. If you're talking about we're playing so well at home, but that doesn't mean anything either. Anytime you beat Hurst, it's a big game.
To come in here, you know, starting the first 2 games in Boston, and I think in our own mind, we want to at least split here. And winning the first one you got to feel good about it. We feel great about it.
Time now for this week's quiz, brought to you by Chevrolet. Jose Canseco drove in 124 runs to win the RBI title. Who was the last player to win 3 straight RBI titles? Pitching took center stage. With back-to-back one-hitters, Steib twice came within 1 out of a no-hitter. The first was broken up by Cleveland's Julio Franco.
Steib's ready. Here's the 2-2 windup. A swing and a bouncer to second. Big hop over the head of Lee into right center. It took a bad hop. It went over Manny Lee's head into right center for a base hit.
Steib was foiled in his next outing when he again went 8 2/3 innings without allowing a hit. This time, his bid for the Blue Jays' first no-hitter was spoiled by Baltimore's Jim Traber.
A swing and a shot down the right field line. It's a base hit. And there goes another no-hit bid for Dave Steib.
Felt like I had good command of my pitches, threw a lot of strikes. The difference between last game and this game was I think I got ahead of more hitters and threw more strikes. And otherwise, it was exactly the same.
It was a good pitch to Traber?
Yeah. I don't even think it was a strike. It was way down and in and broke his bat.
A bittersweet ending for Steib, who became one of 6 pitchers this season to lose a no-hitter in the 9th inning. Tom Browning of the Reds came up 1 out short in June, but 3 months later against the Dodgers, he became the first National Leaguer in 23 years to pitch a perfect game. Brilliant, too, was the Dodgers' Orel Hershiser, who joined 5 other pitchers in winning 20 games. Moreover, in throwing 59 consecutive scoreless innings, he broke a record that was set by the Dodgers' own Don Drysdale 20 years ago in 1968, a year, too, which belonged to the pitcher. Let's look back.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept.
I have a dream that one day...
All of you, and now on to Chicago, and let's win there.
In 1968, America was a nation in battle. There was war in Vietnam and rioting at home. Still, one aspect of the American landscape stayed pretty much the same as the game of baseball continued to capture the imagination of millions. As we conclude our series on Baseball 1968, we're joined again by John Fogerty, rock and roll musician and host of this series.
Thanks, Mal. 1968 was a year of crisis. The headlines screamed the names King, Kennedy, LBJ, and Nixon. In the more serene world of baseball, the names were Drysdale, Marichal, Gibson, and McLean. For that long, hot summer of '68 belonged to the pitchers, who absolutely dominated the game. Absolutely.
I don't know what happened. I don't think anybody knows what happened, because we're still playing with the same bats and balls, and the distance is the same. But every once in a while, the pitchers will take over, and in 1968, they seem to take over.
Whenever pitchers dominate, they talk about a number of things. Expansion, which didn't happen that particular year, or the strike zone was bigger, or dead ball era. But that was a year when, I mean, Gibson had the most phenomenal year in the history of pitching. And over in the American League, Denny McLain, of course, the last pitcher to win 30 games. It was just one of those years where the pitchers dominated the action.
I'll say the combined batting averages for both leagues was a paltry .237, and pitchers threw a total of 5 no-hitters and 1 perfect game. The perfect game belonged to none other than Oakland's Hall of Famer, Catfish Hunter. The no-hitters belonged to Baltimore Orioles pitcher Tom Phoebus, who no-hit Boston in the first month of the season, and Cincinnati Reds hurler George Culver, who no-hit the Phillies. There were even no-hitters thrown on consecutive days, as Gaylord Perry of the Giants threw one against St. Louis, and the Cardinals' Ray Washburn turned around and no-hit the Giants the very next day. There was also a total of 6 20-game winners, and even 1 30-game winner.
Or maybe it was just a slump of the hitters in 1968. There might have been a change of the baseball a little bit. You know, the baseball might have got a little bit smaller. Pitchers could take and handle it in their hands better and make it do more. Maybe it was more Vaseline that year than it was any other time, or more spit, but that was the year that the pitchers had better records, better earned run averages and everything.
I want to first express my high regard to Don Drysdale. Who pitched his sixth straight shutout tonight.
Drysdale's 58 consecutive scoreless innings held until another Dodger, Oral Hershiser, broke the mark last week with his streak of 59 consecutive scoreless innings.
You know, it's been there for 20 years, and I've said at least it's another Dodger doing it, and I'm still alive being able to see it, and I said it's a guy who has a number that the clubhouse guys didn't think would be around at the end of spring training doing it anyway.
1968 saw some big win totals, namely Denny McClain's 31 victories, and some record-low ERAs, like Bob Gibson's 1.12. Gibby posted a 22-9 record for the Cardinals, while San Francisco Giants ace Juan Marichal captured a 26-9 mark.
Instruction was at its peak. Guys were really taking the game seriously. They were being treated a little better as a pitcher. Guys were pitching every fourth and fifth day. There are a lot of good pitchers today, but you don't have 3 and 4 deep starters like you did in the late 60s, early 70s. And expansion took care of that. But I thought the game itself, the hitting was good. Everybody knew how to play the game. And I'm not saying they don't today. They certainly know how to play the game today, too. But I think they played the game just a little bit better because there were fewer players.
As a result of all that pitching dominance in '68, the mounds were actually lowered the following season, from 15 inches down to 10. And that, of course, made things tougher for pitchers.
It was hard. It was a lot harder than those other years because I had been taught to pitch on a mound that was 15 inches high. And all of a sudden, they changed it. They'd lower the mound. And so now, the things that you did without thinking about it, you really had to work at it. And it was a struggle.
But in the year of the pitcher, 1968, all of the struggles belonged to league hitters. 1968 was a year of turmoil. Most of all, it was a time of change. Thanks for joining us for a special look back. For This Week in Baseball, I'm John Fogerty.
Much appreciated, John, and thanks a lot for being part of our show this season. Time now for the answer to this week's quiz, brought to you by Chevrolet. George Foster won 3 consecutive RBI titles with Cincinnati in 1976, 77, and 78.
Hello again, everybody, with Steve Saw and Harry Carey at Wrigley Field on this, the final day of the 1988 season. And the home of the great.
A big league rendition of the national anthem here on the last day of the regular season of 1988.
For this year's division winners, it was on to points east and west for the playoffs, while for all the rest, goodbye until next spring. But before packing it in, let's consider some events of the last day. At Wrigley Field, Olympic gymnast and medal winner Phoebe Mills tossed out the first pitch. Speaking of acrobatics, Seattle's Dave Valley performed the season's last handstand, or something to that effect. In the season's last battle of the Birds in Toronto, the last great play came courtesy of Jesse Barfield.
In the air to right, coming quickly is Barfield. He makes the catch.
Meanwhile, in Cincinnati, the season's last great play off the field brought a souvenir and congratulations all around.
Kid caught that ball. What a catch.
At Shea Stadium, one last hot foot for the Mets, just in time to beat out Montreal's Pascual Perez, whose own efforts came up empty. As for Baltimore manager Frank Robinson, the season mercifully came to a close, but not before the Orioles lost their 107th game.
It should do it. McGriff takes it himself. Steve Hughes to the bag, and the ball game is over. And with it, the final chapter in the 1988 Orioles season is written.
No, like we said earlier, they haven't had to rush him up here. That's a balk, yeah.
Credit Seattle's Eric Hansen with the season's 924th and final balk. The circumstances were far rosier, though, in Los Angeles, where the Dodgers happily counted down the season before heading into the playoffs. But right now, let's head to Seattle for the very last out of the season.
And a swing and a miss. The season is over.
For baseball fans, the saddest of all possible words. Now, let's open the notebook for This Week in Baseball's TWIB notes from around the majors. Although the Minnesota Twins failed to repeat as champions, their defense was outstanding. In fact, they set a Major League record with the fewest errors in history. Also great at the gate, the Twins topped the 3 million mark with the largest attendance of any American League team ever. San Diego's Tony Gwynn won his third batting title. Only this season, he won it with a .313 average, lowest ever for a National League batting champ.
To be honest with you, it doesn't mean that much to me this year because I haven't been consistent all year long. And both times I won the batting title before I was consistent, I felt most of the year. So that's going to detract from it a little bit.
Mets pitchers rolled into postseason play with impressive hitting credentials, some more impressive than others. That fact was noted by Phillies broadcasters in a game against the Mets. You see, they gave a thumbs down to David Cohn's hitting. So Cohn went to the booth to argue his case.
Check the stats there, Cohn.
143, that's a hard one.
There he is right here, folks. Oh, it's a hard 143.
143. Look at that. I've got 3 doubles, too.
3 doubles. You got 5 sacrifices. You should be proud of that now.
Yeah, 5 sacrifices. I've only struck out 13 times.
13 times and 77 at-bats. All right, Wills, you want to retract your statement?
I just apologized to him. You never know who's listening, do you?
Cub fans were listening to President Reagan when he stopped in at Wrigley Field during a visit to Chicago. After he had tossed out the first pitch, the president sat behind the mic to do a little play-by-play.
And there goes a ball down over second base, and it's a hit out into center field. 1 run in, men on first and third. And another strike, swinging, and it's out. And that retires the side. 3 out, and the man dies on third base. Well, good to see you, and thank you for letting me sit in here and do this.
Thank you for coming in.
It's been a pleasure. It really has.
Time now to salute our Player of the Year, brought to you by Old Spice. Oakland's Jose Canseco combined power and speed to collect 42 home runs and 40 steals, making him the first player ever to reach the 40-40 plateau. Canseco also drove in 100 runs for the 3rd straight time. Congratulations, Jose, on an outstanding season. Series in both leagues as the 1988 season whittles down to 2 World Series contenders. That's all for now, folks. See you next week on This Week in Baseball.